her logo threes, her court vision, her gravity. Caitlin Clark wasn't just putting up numbers, she was bending the game in ways that had NBA players comparing her to Steph Curry. But what happened on March 26, 2023, didn't just prove the hype, it marked the moment she became a basketball goddess, and in this video, we break down the performance that changed everything. What if I told you there was one night, just one, that split college basketball history in two? A moment so powerful, so unreal, that even the greatest names to ever play the game suddenly felt outdated. That night didn't belong to Michael Jordan.
He'll get it pulled to the fresh shot clock. MJ. Oh, Harry did it! Hey, Michael shakes the...
It didn't belong to Steph Curry.
Allez, faut continuer à aller voler les ballons. Et ce diable de Curry qui nous fait mal.
It didn't even belong to the WNBA legends who laid the groundwork for the sport. No, this night belonged to Caitlin Clark. Let's get something straight. Basketball isn't just about stats or wins. It's about moments, those lightning-in-a-bottle flashes when a player rises so far above the game, it stops being just a game. Think Bird versus Magic in the 80s. Think MJ's flu game. Think Allen Iverson crossing up legends. Moments that define eras. Caitlin Clark created one of those. And here's the wild part. She did it in a game that wasn't even the Final Four. No national championship. No trophy on the line. Just an Elite Eight matchup between Iowa and Louisville. On paper, it looked like any other March Madness game. But what Caitlin did that night, it was mythical. You could feel it before tip-off. There was something different in the air. It wasn't nerves. It wasn't pressure. It was energy, like the entire arena knew they were about to witness something that would be talked about for decades. And when the game started, she didn't walk onto the court. She arrived, like a storm with sneakers and a chip on her shoulder.
Emulated to not much success.
Ooh, Kate Martin hoping that cameras didn't catch it. How about Gabby Marshall? No. Kate Martin again. Oh, 0 for 2. And Caitlin Clark just showing why she is one of one, folks.
This wasn't a game for her, it was a mission. A personal war against every doubt, every early round exit, every so-called analyst who said she couldn't carry a team this far. And the moment the ball hit her hands, you could tell, she wasn't there to play nice. She was there to destroy. Don't just watch history, follow it. Hit that bell so you don't miss the next chapter in Caitlin Clark's legendary run. Caitlin didn't just score, she commanded. She pulled defenders like gravity, bent the game to her will, and forced Louisville to double-team her just to survive. Every time she stepped past half-court, it felt like the ground tilted in her direction. You couldn't look away. Even Sue freaking Bird, was in the building, watching her with wide eyes like the rest of us. A WNBA icon witnessing a torch being lit right in front of her. And that's the thing people still don't get. This wasn't just an impressive performance. This was a transcendence. One of those rare times where an athlete breaks through every label, every box, every comparison and says, I'm something new. She wasn't the next anybody. Not the next Diana Taurasi. Not the female Steph Curry. She was the first Caitlin Clark. Her name didn't just trend, it echoed. Across arenas, across timelines, across the entire basketball world. And people who didn't even follow women's college hoops suddenly knew one thing. Caitlin Clark just did something they've never seen before.
So Minnesota's going to have to avoid drought. So far, struggling here. From the logo, ladies and gentlemen. The Gophers on the board. Clark again. Somebody is in her bag. Like somebody's trying to prove something.
By the end of the night, she had dropped 41 points. But it wasn't just the number, it was how she did it. With flair, with fire, with a level of confidence that dared you to blink. She tossed behind the back passes like they were nothing. Hit logo threes like they were free throws. Talked her SHT without flinching. And every second, it looked like she was having fun. That's the most dangerous kind of player, the one who dominates and enjoys doing it.
Now just trying to keep this thing close early here. Clark responding beautifully. You see that? That's a tough shot. Sedano's all. Clark just in her element, but look at how she's closely guarded here by Sedano. That's not bad defense. That's just better offense. She creates that space for...
Now here's where it gets even crazier. This wasn't her first big game. Caitlin had been torching teams all season. She led the nation in both scoring and assists. She had 40-point games before. But something about this game, something about the stakes, the crowd, the opponent, unlocked something new, something untouchable, something divine. Call it what you want. Zone, flow state, blackout mode. The truth is, Caitlin Clark turned into something else that night. A force of nature, a walking cheat code, like the basketball gods had whispered in her ear and said, go.
Huge with this team. Davis getting it to Clark. That's another three-point basket for Caitlin Clark, her fifth of the day. As Clark is now 2 triples shy of setting a new single-season women's record. Make it 1 shy. Caitlin Clark. Wow. Hand in her face. 1 shy.
And yet, as jaw-dropping as the performance was, it was the impact that hit harder. She didn't just carry Iowa to their first Final Four under her watch, she shifted the way people talked about women's basketball. Headlines changed, ticket prices skyrocketed, jersey sales exploded. Girls in gymnasiums across the country started pulling up from deep, shouting her name instead of Curry's. But here's the part that hits hardest, not everyone liked it. As fast as she rose, the backlash began. Haters came out of the woodwork. People called her cocky, said she was too flashy, said she hadn't earned it yet. But let's be real, if this exact performance came from a male player, they'd be carving his name into the Hall of Fame already. Caitlin Clark didn't wait for permission. She took the spotlight and ripped it open. And the people who couldn't handle that? They were the same ones who had no idea they were witnessing the birth of something legendary. Because on March 26, 2023, Caitlin Clark didn't just win a game, she changed the game. And the story only gets wilder from here. Before she became the face of college basketball, Caitlin Clark had to face something far tougher than any opponent: failure. Not the kind you can laugh off or blame on a bad shooting night. No, this was the kind that sticks with you. The kind that rewinds in your mind at 2 a.m. The kind that turns elite athletes into obsessed warriors.
Back Bentley comes up with it. Here's Clark in transition where she's dangerous. Leaves it behind for
Clark just kind of takes Leisure Clarendon with her and opens up.
rebound Clark.
Here's just 1 of 5.
Because make no mistake, Caitlin didn't get here by cruising through March Madness. In fact, she crashed and burned more than once. In 2021, it was UConn, a powerhouse program led by Paige Buchers, another rising star. Clark's freshman run ended in the Sweet 16, and it wasn't even close. She got outplayed, outpaced, and sent home with the reminder that talent alone wasn't enough to conquer college basketball. Then came 2022, arguably worse. Iowa was a number 2 seed. Expectations were sky high. And who did they lose to? Creighton, a 10th seed. A team nobody expected to go anywhere. It was a brutal, humiliating upset. And once again, Caitlin was left watching from the sidelines while other teams danced deeper into the tournament.
Clark from the logo, her first shot from downtown, and she drains it. Are you kidding me? Clark steps away from failure and barely hits iron. And so without
that kind of back-to-back heartbreak, it messes with you. It builds pressure most players would buckle under, and in Caitlin's case, it created a storm. Not publicly, she didn't whine, didn't point fingers, but internally, she was stockpiling every disappointment like fuel. Because here's what no one saw behind the highlights and headlines: she remembered every loss, every reporter who said she couldn't lead, every fan who said she was just a scorer, every moment she watched someone else's dream come true while hers crumbled. That's what made 2023 so dangerous.
Clark from the logo, her first shot from downtown, and she drains it. Are you kidding me? Clark steps away from failure and barely hits iron. And so without Sonano on the floor and O'Grady inside.
She wasn't just playing to win. She was playing to redeem every painful exit, every unfinished chapter, and every time someone dared to count her out. So when Iowa made it to the Elite Eight, it wasn't just another game, it was a reckoning. She wasn't just fighting for a spot in the Final Four. She was fighting her own history, her own doubts, her own ghosts. And what she did next, it wasn't just personal, it was explosive. By the time the Elite Eight rolled around, the atmosphere was electric, but this wasn't just hype. This felt different. 2 teams, 2 stars, and 1 game that was going to decide more than just who advanced. This was legacy versus legacy, pride versus pressure, and Caitlin Clark right at the center of it all. Across from her stood Hailey Van Lith, a fierce, battle-tested guard with fire in her veins and March in her blood. She wasn't intimidated. She wasn't backing down. In fact, Van Lith had already done what Caitlin hadn't: lead her team to a Final Four. And now, she was ready to do it again. But this wasn't just a star-on-star matchup. This was a clash of mentality. Van Lith brought grit and attitude. She talked her talk and thrived on chaos. Meanwhile, Clark had ice in her veins. She didn't flinch, didn't fold, she just took over. And the world was watching, waiting to see which of these two would bend and which one would break. Iowa entered the game with a 29-6 record. Louisville wasn't far behind at 26-11. On paper, it looked balanced. But paper means nothing in March. This wasn't about seeding. This wasn't about stats. This was about who could own the moment.
Get the floor spread. Clark pulls up deep three and hits it. Under 2 minutes to go. Clark will try again. And again! Come on!
And early on, it looked like Louisville had the edge. Van Lith came out swinging, 8 quick points, full confidence, and a clear message: we're not going down easy. She set the tone. She forced Iowa on their heels, and for a few minutes, it felt like Caitlin was going to have to claw her way out of another nightmare. But this is where things took a sharp turn, because when Clark saw her team slip behind, she didn't panic. She didn't get rattled. She snapped into another level. She hit a deep three, then another, 7 straight points like it was nothing. Just like that, Iowa was back in it. And just like that, Louisville had a problem. The crowd knew it. The cameras caught it. And even Sue Bird, watching from the stands, couldn't help but take notice. Caitlin wasn't just responding. She was erasing Louisville's confidence. This wasn't a back-and-forth game anymore. This was a slow build towards something massive. The kind of performance where the air gets thicker, the noise gets louder, and you just know something big is coming. Because Caitlin Clark hadn't even gotten started yet. And what happened next? That's where things exploded. What happened next wasn't just dominance, it was a meltdown of reality. Because from the second quarter onward, Caitlin Clark stopped playing basketball the way everyone else does. She flipped the switch. The lights got brighter, the pressure got heavier, and she thrived. Let's be real, there are players who rise to the moment, and then there are players who become the moment. Clark was the latter. Every time she touched the ball, the crowd held its breath. Not because they were nervous, but because they knew. They knew the shot was going in. They knew something unreal was about to happen. And the craziest part? She made it look easy. Step-back threes from 30 feet. Cross-court dimes through traffic. Drives to the rim that froze defenders in place. It didn't matter what Louisville threw at her. Double teams, traps, pressure. They were all just background noise. She wasn't bothered. She was calm, locked in, and deadly. By the 7-minute mark of the second quarter, Iowa scored their first basket that wasn't either made or assisted by Clark. Let that sink in. The first one. Up until that point, she had been responsible for every single point Iowa put on the board. And even on that play, she had the hockey assist, meaning she still initiated the bucket. And that's what made her performance so terrifying. You couldn't stop her scoring. You couldn't stop her passing. And the more you tried to pressure her, the more dangerous she became. At one point, a Louisville defender was so desperate to stay with her that she crashed into a cameraman. That's how slippery she was. That's how far defenders were being stretched just trying to contain her. Meanwhile, her stat line just kept ballooning. Points, assists, rebounds, even steals. She was filling every column, running the show like a puppet master. Every bucket was a punch. Every assist was a dagger. And Louisville? They had no answers. Their coach was visibly frustrated. The crowd could feel the shift. And by halftime, the scoreboard was starting to tilt. But here's the wildest part of it all. Clark didn't even look like she was trying. She had that effortless kind of confidence you can't teach. The kind that comes from pain, pressure, and preparation all mixing into something unstoppable. By the end of the third quarter, Iowa had flipped a 1-point lead into a 20-point beatdown. The arena wasn't just loud, it was shaking. People weren't watching a basketball game anymore. They were watching history. And yet, even after all that, Caitlin still had one more gear left to hit. Because as the fourth quarter began, something unthinkable was on the horizon. At a certain point, even the casual fans couldn't deny it anymore. What Caitlin Clark was doing didn't look normal. She wasn't just playing well. She was pulling off moves most players wouldn't even attempt. Deep step backs, logo threes, crossovers into contested jumpers like it was a layup line. And that's when it started happening, the comparisons. Not to any WNBA player, not to any college legend, but to Steph Curry. It wasn't a lazy take. It wasn't clickbait. It was real. NBA players started tweeting about her. Fans flooded the comments with Curry emojis. Analysts couldn't stop bringing it up. Because when you watched Caitlin move, shoot, and manipulate the floor, it was impossible not to see it. She didn't just shoot from deep. She reprogrammed defenses the way Curry does, forcing teams to guard her the second she crossed half court. And when they did, she cooked them anyway. They chased her off screens, doubled her off the catch, shaded her with help. Nothing worked. That's not just range, that's gravity, and only the truly elite have it. And get this, Sue Bird was in the crowd that night. One of the greatest point guards to ever lace them up. She wasn't watching like a legend passing the torch. She was watching like a fan. You could see it in her face. Even she couldn't believe what she was seeing. The vision, the fearlessness, the confidence to shoot from the parking lot. It was Curry-level stuff. But here's the difference. Steph had to fight critics who said he was too small, too weak, too unorthodox. Caitlin, she's dealing with all that, and then some. She's doing this in a system that still doesn't give women's hoops the respect it deserves. And still, she's out here pulling from 30 feet like she's got a glitch in the game. Let's be honest, there's a reason crowds were selling out arenas just to watch her warm up. There's a reason opposing fans were staying after games to get autographs from the enemy. Because whether you loved her or hated her, Caitlin Clark gave you something you couldn't ignore: magic. And that's the Steph Curry effect. The ability to completely shift the way the game is played and the way people watch it. Caitlin had it, maybe still does. And on that night, she turned it all the way up. But just when you thought the comparisons were the peak of her performance, she did something that no one, not even Curry, had ever done in March Madness history. At this point, Caitlin Clark had already taken over the game. The highlights were flooding social media before the game was even over. Broadcasters ran out of superlatives. Analysts were tripping over themselves trying to explain what they were watching. But Clark wasn't finished, not even close. Because buried inside all the hype, all the no-look passes and logo threes, was a stat line building towards something no one had ever seen before. Not in women's basketball, not in men's, not in the entire history of the NCAA tournament. A 40-point triple-double. Let that sit for a second. Not just 40 points, not just double-digit assists, but adding rebounds, steals, and full-court domination on every single possession. There had never been a 30-point triple-double in NCAA tournament history, ever. So when Clark crossed 40, it wasn't just a record. It was a revolution. She had 41 points, 10 assists, 8 rebounds, and she wasn't just stat padding. She was ripping Louisville apart while doing it. She pulled defenders so far out of position that her teammates were getting wide-open shots off basic cuts. She manipulated the floor like a veteran NBA point guard, all while launching daggers from near half court. And it wasn't like Louisville didn't try. They ramped up the pressure. They threw bodies at her. They played physical, hoping to slow her down and disrupt the rhythm. But every time they landed a hit, she responded with control, poise, focus. She didn't need to talk trash. Her numbers did all the talking. And when Louisville tried to make it close in the final few minutes, Clark crushed the hope instantly, like a player possessed, like someone who wasn't just playing for a win, but for legacy. Because that's what it was now. Bigger than the Final Four. Bigger than Iowa. This was history in real time. And for everyone watching, on the court, in the stands, or behind a screen, it felt like being part of something that would be talked about for generations. Her final line? 41 points, 12 assists, 10 rebounds, 4 steals, 1 Elite 8 win, and 0 doubt left. She didn't just rewrite the record books, she redefined them. And just when it felt like the world had finally accepted her greatness, that's when the backlash began. You'd think after doing the unthinkable, dropping a 40-point triple-double in the NCAA tournament and dragging your team into the Final Four, people would rally behind you, celebrate you, protect your name like it belonged on a gold plaque. But instead, Caitlin Clark became a target, not because she failed, but because she succeeded too much. The same crowd that couldn't stop chanting her name suddenly flipped. Commentators started picking apart her attitude. Fans said she was too flashy. Opponents whispered about her being cocky. Even fellow athletes began taking veiled shots, hiding criticism behind words like confidence and humility. Why? Because Clark didn't play the role they expected. She wasn't soft-spoken. She wasn't overly humble. She owned the spotlight and never apologized for it. And for some people, especially in women's sports, that was a problem. It's the double standard no one wants to admit. If a male player drops 40, flexes at the crowd, and dishes a no-look dime, he's a legend, a dog, a killer. But if Caitlin Clark does it, suddenly she's disrespectful, too intense, or needs to tone it down. Let's be real, what they wanted was for her to dim her own light. But Clark refused, and that refusal made her polarizing. She wasn't just a baller anymore, she was a symbol. For some, she represented the future, fearless, skilled, unapologetic. For others, she represented a threat, someone shaking up the status quo and making too many people uncomfortable too fast. The criticism came from all directions, subtweets from rivals, passive-aggressive comments in pressers, and fans turning celebration into interrogation. She wasn't just being talked about, she was being picked apart. And yet, through all of it, she kept showing up, kept dropping 30, kept hitting logo threes like layups, kept winning. Because what they didn't realize was that Caitlin Clark had already been through worse. She knew what it was like to lose early, to be doubted, to sit in silence while the world crowned someone else. So no, she didn't fold under pressure. She used it. Because while the world debated whether or not she deserved the spotlight, she was already preparing to take it again. Caitlin Clark didn't just have a moment. She triggered a movement. That game against Louisville, the jaw-dropping 40-point triple-double, wasn't just about record. It was about visibility, power, proof that women's basketball had entered a new era, and Caitlin was the one holding the torch. Ticket prices spiked. TV ratings shattered records. Young girls everywhere started copying her shot form, screaming her name in driveways and gyms. For the first time in a long time, women's college basketball wasn't a niche, it was the main event. And still, she kept getting better, kept pushing the limits. And whether you loved her or hated her, one thing became impossible to deny. Caitlin Clark wasn't a trend, she was a turning point. That night against Louisville wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning. A moment where a rising star officially crossed into myth. A line in the sand between everything basketball used to be and everything it's becoming now. So while some still try to tear her down, others know what's really happening. They're watching a once-in-a-generation talent rewrite the rules in real time. And trust me, this story is far from over. If you thought this performance was wild, wait until you see what Caitlin does next. This is just the beginning of her rise, and we're following every step. So hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss an update. More history's being made, and you'll want a front row seat when it happens. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.